Good evening, everybody. I'm going to call the City of Greenfield Planning Commission meeting to order at 6 p.m. May we have roll call, please?
Chair Garcia,
Here.
Vice Chair Savala,
Here.
Commissioner Urquidez, Commissioner Gallardo, Commissioner Vasquez.
Thank you. We have everyone present. If we could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner DiNardo, could you lead us, please?
Ready to begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for that. Just a little bit of housekeeping for those of us who might be joining us by Zoom. The meeting ID is 876-8074-3187. There's no passcode to enter the meeting. Just raise your hand. And we can now move on to D, public comments from the audience regarding items not on the agenda. Any public comments?
No comments.
And close the public comments, move on to consent agenda. There's one item, which is the adoption of the September 5th, 2023 Planning Commission minutes.
I make a motion to approve the minutes for the September 5th, 2023 Planning Commission meeting.
Second motion.
You have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. We can now move on to public hearings. We have one public hearing this evening, which is the consideration of a resolution approving a design review for minor modifications to an existing wireless facility at a 4.69 more or less acre site at 216 Oak Avenue, assessor parcel number 109-091-022. May we have a staff report? Good evening.
Okay, can you hear me fine? Okay, awesome. Okay, good evening, commissioners. I don't know. Okay, so today's project, like you said, is T-Mobile modifications at 216 Oak Avenue. Although it's a fairly small project, it does require design review per our zoning code. Project information. So the project is located, like I said, on 216 Oak Avenue, mainly at the intersection of Alps and Cedar Avenue. It's in a single-family residential zone. So you can see there's about 4 single-family homes on that lot and a few accessory structures. The project representative is Rijo Varali, but I believe the representative here today is Kaylee Greer. So any questions at the end, we can direct to her. Like we said, the project site is 4.69 acres. And you see right here, the project just occupies this small space right here. So these are minor modifications. It mainly involves the replacing 6 antennas with 6 new ones and swapping out 6 diplexers with 6 new remote radio units and replacing some equipment on the ground, such as new cabinets and of course new cabling for these new components. This project was first approved through a conditional use permit in 2005, and we've made some changes to the conditions of approval, really minor ones, mainly the project description. Also, the address has changed since then. So it's went from 41697 Oak to 216 Oak Avenue. But the conditions are pretty much unchanged besides these small updates. Like I said, design review is required since it's not a like-for-like swap and it involves new components such as the radio units. We required it. So here's a view of the antenna modifications. You can see the new radio units installed on there. So yeah, the one on the right is the existing, left is the proposed. You have the full the full plans on your staff report. Here are some elevations of what it looks like. So as you can see, the branches are intended to sort of hide the antenna from public view. So this is what it looks like now on the right, and then the proposed new antennas on the left. Here are some more photo simulations, and you have the rest of those also attached on the staff report. So like I said, there's been minor modifications to the approved design, and these changes are also reflected on the conditions of approval. Staff has no issues with the proposed modifications. The project is also CEQA exempt. And that is pretty much all. So in conclusion, once we complete deliberations, staff recommends the Planning Commission adopts Resolution 2023-20, approving a design review permit for the proposed minor modifications to the existing wireless facility at 216 Oak Avenue. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Maybe you have any more technical questions about the antennas, I'm sure Kaylee will be happy to answer those.
Thank you very much, Ms. Meza, for that staff report. Does anybody have initial questions for staff? I have a question regarding the address. That's kind of a big jump from a 5-digit address down to a 216. What's the history behind that? Was it intended to be at a different place initially, or I just found that kind of odd.
Yeah, the address, this used to be the address for this location, and at some point it changed. I honestly don't know why. Could have been some updates with city addressing. I don't know. Yeah. Sorry about that.
Okay, if there's no further questions from the commission, are there any public comments? Any hands raised?
No hands.
Okay. Then we will close the public hearing unless you guys have questions for the applicant. Okay. All right, I'm going to close the public hearing and move on to Planning Commission discussion and decision. Well, I'd just like to say that clearly the modifications are minor. The panels are just maybe a few inches wider, but I never even noticed that tower. So it's, I want to compliment T-Mobile on its tree design. It was very, I never saw it.
Good.
So if there's nothing else, I'm happy to entertain a motion if someone's inclined.
I move that the Planning Commission of the City of Greenville adopt resolution number 2023-20, granting design review approval for minor alterations to an existing wireless facility at 216 Oak Avenue, subject to conditions of approval included in the resolution.
Thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you, commissioners. On the behalf of T-Mobile, we really appreciate your time and attention to this project and your continued partnership at this location. Thank you for the beautiful presentation, Evelyn.
Thank you for attending. Okay, so now we can move on to G, other business. Our first item is an update regarding housing issues. Our staff report.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Planning Commission. We won't be providing a presentation for you this evening. We thought that since cycle 5 of the RENA allocation process just concluded in June and the new cycle 6, which are 8-year cycles, just began, we just fill you in on where we are exactly and what we did in cycle 5. It's pretty well known because we report on it regularly, and so we've provided this data to you. The first quarter for cycle 6 is going to be reported in a couple of months yet because HCD has designated they've left the 6 months between July and which is the beginning of the fiscal year and the close of the calendar year as kind of overlapping time period where jurisdictions are allowed to contribute and rack up their numbers on cycle 5 and also for jurisdictions like us to begin our cycle 6 production. And as you see, we already have 100 units with the EAH building permits that were issued several weeks ago, and they're doing the grading work now. So I'll conclude my remarks and answer any questions that you might have. Obviously, the report's pretty brief.
Okay, thank you for that. We can open up public comments on this item. Housing issues and our cycle 5 and cycle 6 arena. Any hands raised? Comments from chambers? Okay,
No hands raised.
Thank you. We'll close public comments and move on to planning commission discussion and decision. Is there something to decide?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so we'll just have discussion.
That's good page.
I would just like to mention that the packet that we were that was delivered to us is a little different than the online one because I looked at the online one at work and it had more, I think it had a more in-depth staff report on your item. I don't know.
Ma'am, the only update to the online one was I forgot to include the September minutes that was approved today. That's the only change. Other than that, that's it.
I thought there was more of a staff report on this item.
It is the same one.
Okay, any discussion on this? Okay, well, I just want to again congratulate the city for outdoing its numbers with regard to cycle 5 and where we are currently beginning with cycle 6. And I hope we can continue to be a model of reaching our REMA numbers. So I'll close out that item and open up item 2, which is consider and provide input regarding a rental registry and permit ordinance. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Planning Commission. I will try and be brief because this is your opportunity to weigh in on an effort that we've been working on for a long time, and many jurisdictions, not only in California but in different locations across the country, have addressed something similar. Some call it a rental registry. Monterey and the city of Salinas have recently adopted similar ordinances, and different components of this effort resemble a program sometimes, not unlike the density bonus program with an affordable housing project. Other times it resembles a permit. It's like the cannabis industry. We have specific permits for cannabis and they only apply for the cannabis industry. And so in reality, this is somewhat of a hybrid, but the goals are the same. The goals are what we're trying to accomplish here. We want to get input from the Planning Commission regarding 3 questions. Why are you doing this? We being the city, what is the purpose of the proposed ordinance? Because no matter what moves forward in the form of a legislative initiative like an ordinance, it'll require some changes to the municipal code. So regardless of whether we call it a program or a permit, it is of interest to staff how you view what we're about to describe. And then the second question is, well, what would the ordinance actually do? And then the third, of course, are what are the limitations? Because, well, we'll talk about the because in a moment. So most of my remarks are here because this is really for the planning commission to provide the staff your thoughts. We want to bring back to the city council a legislative initiative that might pass and that might be of some benefit to the community. So this really, we need to really implement try and capture the input that we receive from elected and appointed leaders like yourself, but also during the housing element process, we received a great deal of input from residents who had various challenges and things to say about housing. And what this is mainly focused on is the rental housing. Given the numbers that we presented to you in the housing report, the city hosts a strong housing sector, and we have a significant amount of multifamily. ADUs are becoming more and more prevalent in the city, and other types of rental housing arrangements. Approximately, according to the census and the 2019 report referenced in your staff report, approximately 50% of housing in the city is rental units. Say that the city of Bay City, Michigan, as an example, has compelling pieces to their ordinance, which we'll visit later. The goal tonight is to have a thought-provoking conversation regarding what may or may not be acceptable to the city council. As planning commissioners, of course, staff expects that you commissioners also hear from your constituents and also will provide vital information to assist staff with crafting an ordinance that we can bring back to decision makers for approval. City Attorney Thompson is here this evening because, first, we want to welcome Jennifer. Staff encourages commissioners to ask appropriate questions of the city attorney where appropriate, because the overall idea it's a number of sensitive issues, things like private property, property inspections, health and safety of residents, and resources. One question we will revisit later is in terms of how you address the issue of inspections. The city of Bay City's Michigan's ordinance, they have an entire rental unit department in their city. And I'm familiar with this area, and this is an area that is not overly friendly to government. It's a rural area, and in Bay City, Michigan, landlords are required to obtain a permit that lasts for 3 years. The cost is very nominal. It's $20 or $30. I can't remember, but every year the landlords will come in and get the permit, and it works. And the city sends out inspectors, and they write up any code issues that they're not compliant with, and give landlords the opportunity to correct areas that may not be up to code or are an imminent threat to the health and safety. The ordinance certainly would have some impact on landlords, tenants, city staff, and of course, it would also have influence on existing nuisance properties in the city and the community as a whole. I've got this working, eh? All right. Well, the purpose of this work is driven by the city's interest in protecting the health and safety of renters and also, landlords. The city is very concerned with the property management, with the proper management of the infrastructure, which supports our strong housing sector, specifically water, sewer in our streets, if we can't deliver clean water and have our sewer system where it needs to be, this strong housing sector could become a serious problem. Staff has found that every jurisdiction that is a comparable ordinance normally has one weighted either more toward benevolent purposes, such as housing element compliance, a register if all rental properties are registered with the city, like in Salinas's ordinance that's in your staff report. You'll notice that there's a lot of significant information like names, the bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 3 bath, information that the city tries to collect include things like the rent. We're not interested in those type of metrics. We're mainly interested in context of a registration of these properties is learning what's available as it relates to our housing element in the city of Greenfield's case. We don't have the challenge of striving to achieve our RHNA numbers. We've already achieved our RHNA numbers, so we're less interested in the innumerable grants and other opportunities that are out there to increase our numbers more than they are. We're more focused on a balance between market rate housing and the allocation that we've been assigned by the state already for the next 8 years. And we're well on our way already in our first year to accomplishing our RHNA numbers for very low and low income households. So these benevolent interests help many jurisdictions, but the city of Greenfield expects that the city's ordinance will include that type of data that will help document our housing inventory in great detail, but also include compliance issues such as inspections. For example, does the planning commission or city council desire to inspect these properties, and if so, to what degree? For example, in the commercial sector, in the commercial properties, by obtaining a business license, we already are inspecting all of our commercial properties. And similarly, we also maintain a thorough inventory of our commercial properties. Residential, not so much. We don't really know exactly how many units other than what we are able to manage through the building permit process. And that's our whole RHNA process. But when it comes to the question, let's say somebody said, I'm looking for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. How many of those do you have in this city? We can't answer that question. Now, whether we should answer that is a different question altogether. But the issue of inspections is very important because, well, take for example, excuse me. Let's imagine hypothetically a 1,500 square houses that has 36 residents living in the house. As you're well aware from the building code and the work that you do, the law allows 200 square feet per person. That's what the law says. Now, that's not really enforced too much because there's a conflict about we can't really regulate the size of families and the size of an ADU that they may be living in, that sort of thing. But 1 person per 200 square feet is what is codified in the building code about what the appropriate amount of space for a person living in. So take a hypothetical where there's 35 people living in a 1,500 square foot house in your neighborhood. What do we do about it? Right now, it's by chance that we would do anything about it. And let's say hypothetically that you look further into this property and you learn that the owner has 40 other properties in Monterey County, just if not like the one that has 35 people living in it, but plus or minus and everything in between. Again, the question becomes, should we be doing something about that, or at least taking a look at it? Because that's the kind of pressure on our infrastructure that causes the public works director tremendous angst, because we're trying to, of course, keep a wastewater sewer treatment plant sufficiently maintained that it can provide necessary services for our residents or clean water. God forbid anything happens that puts Greenfield in the same situation that Flint, Michigan was in. But part of addressing that challenge is making sure that properties like I just described are addressed. That would be normally referred to as a nuisance property. And the hope, and it's only a hope, the hope is that by an ordinance that either it's referred to several things, a rental registry, where all of the rental units are chronicled and kept track of, not unlike you'll remember after 2008 when all housing totally crashed. The city maintained a registry of abandoned properties and properties that were in such dire condition it warranted significant city interest in making sure that something other than complete destruction of our neighborhoods occurred. And that binder is in my office now, but this is the type of thing that would resemble a rental registry. The question of the type of program that this might involve also elicits staff's great interest in your opinion. For example, right now, business licensure. All commercial businesses in the city need a business license to conduct business. For landlords, the municipal code would include landlords as it's written today. But landlords today do not come to the city and get a business license for whatever reason. And that's an open question. Should an ordinance such as this move forward and become city's law through the ordinance? The question about whether a landlord should obtain a business license is in play. Should a landlord obtain a business license in order to rent to non-family members? In essence, they are meeting the requirements described in the municipal code as a business and would require a business license. At present, you may recall the city passed an ordinance that permits at minimum inspections of these properties when commercial entity obtains a business license, an inspector goes out and visits the property and makes sure that the use is what is represented on the business license. And if there are other issues, they'll be notified, but it's not a heavy-handed enforcement tool. It's just to ensure that the business license is consistent with the business. And in almost all cases, they are consistent. Ordinance that we're asking your input asks you to provide us input. Do you think a landlord should have to get a business license? Yes or no, and why? And if the answer is yes, the city currently has, as I said, inspection authority, plain view and otherwise for that effort. Otherwise means in the commercial areas, the inspectors will go in and they will visit the property itself. Well, how that would work with rental units is an open question. So multifamily complex has 150 units. Is the building inspector going to go and enter 150 units? Probably not. The objective, again, going back to the primary objective of this effort, is to protect public safety, health and safety, basically our residents living in a dwelling that's habitable. Is it consistent or compliant, rather, with the California building codes that are enforced to protect everybody's health and safety? And second, to make sure that the city's infrastructure is sufficient to deliver services. Water and sewer is mainly what we're referring to. So that basically concludes my remarks about why we are here. We are hosting, this community development department is hosting a workshop for the public on Monday the 13th, both during the morning hours from 10 to 12, I believe, and in the evening 6. I believe it begins at 6 in the evening. It will all be there, eliciting input from the public. Now, that said, we have already received tremendous input during the housing element outreach effort. I would also notice, I think I mentioned in the staff report, the city of Salinas hosted 22 outreach activities. And so we're trying to take advantage of the work that other jurisdictions already have undertaken, because we have a good idea about what might work and what probably will not work in our community. For example, Monterey just recently passed an ordinance. The city of Salinas ordinance that was in your staff report is interesting because it did not start out to be the ordinance that it is today. In fact, the inspection portion of that was scaled back tremendously to almost nothing. Basically, the authorities that they discuss in the ordinance are the same authorities that they already have. And basically, it's probable cause or complaint based. If there's a property that's been identified that might have some issues, the city will prepare a staff report, present it to the city council, and the city council will provide the appropriate authority and direction to staff to remedy it. We already have that authority on nuisance properties, and I think you've been involved in receiverships and some of the challenged properties that we've had over the years. So in short, we're taking our time putting this together because we want something that will benefit the community. And by community, when half of your housing stock are rental units, you better believe that we're talking about communities here. We're not interested in shedding anything that doesn't need to be upset. We want to make sure that residents in the city are living in safe dwellings, and we want to make sure that the city is capable of delivering safe water and effective sewer disposal systems. So I'll be quiet, and unless the city attorney has something to add, we really want to really hear all of your opinions about various aspects of this. Mainly, why are we doing it? There's the benevolent side, and then there's the enforcement side of problem properties. And then we're also very interested in learning what limitations that you as a planning commissioner might insist on. High fees might be an example, might be a great idea, on and on and on. But we have no interest in charging a $500 fee for this effort. That's an example of something that might be a limitation that is just not going to work for anybody. So we're interested in limitations that you think staff should be aware of. So with that, Madam Chair, I'll be quiet for a while and try and take notes and try and answer your questions as you have them. And I'll be quiet now.
Thank you for that report, Mr. Mugen. We can go ahead and open public comments on this.
Good evening. My name is Jessica, and I'm really encouraged that this is finally coming forward, as in 2021, I came and, expressed my frustration with nuisance properties in my neighborhood, and the city of Greenfield, which I knew had basically one hand tied behind their back, and you currently still do. There's not much that you can do. Saying that you don't want to upset, the public. I think you already have a lot of homeowners that are very upset because we have to deal with the overcrowding, the large amount of waste, the fact that the street sweeper can't clean our street because cars never get moved, the amount of garbage that sits out on garbage day that gets flooded all over the neighborhood. So there are many situations here that I think are unique. And Greenfield is one of them. With the fact with the ADUs in the state of California, describing that we do have a housing crisis. Yes, that is true. But Greenfield, with the severe lack of public transportation and one home having 8 to 11 to 12 cars imposes, problems and flows into other homes and creates a problem for myself and my visitors. I would like to ask Commissioner Zavala, as property manager of Chispa, how do you maintain such a clean complexes? How do you, your parking situation, those type of things? I think you have somebody on your board that can assist you in that type of direction. As businesses, you heard, we have to get licenses, we have to have insurances, and we are subjected to inspections. Rental units and landlords is a business. I also believe another problem we have, landlords renting to someone, and then that person starts subletting rooms out. So there's another situation you have on your hand. And I apologize, just give me one more minute because I do have a lot of notes. Another thing, I also have concerns about the quality of our sewer and the level of where we're at. I know that we have yet to really make, improvements to our sewer situation. Just give me a minute. I just want to kind of go over. I think that the city currently is getting a lot of costs with a lot of the situation that we have. So having some sort of licensing fee would be revenue for the city that you can go out and, inspect these homes in situations like that. But right now, this area has no oversight. And I think that really needs to come to a screeching halt. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any hands raised for public comment? I don't see any attendees. So,
No hands raised.
okay, with that, I'll close public comments and move on to planning commission discussion and comments. Anybody who'd like to start, please do.
Well, I wanted to say we didn't get a staff report, right?
Not to the one that was delivered to our house, but the one that was emailed to us.
Oh, okay.
That's why I mentioned it the first.
Yeah,
The first,
and we don't have that clear, right? Okay.
No, that was emailed. Right. So.
Was that not included on your, because
No,
the one that was emailed?
I brought one.
Oh,
Yeah, me too.
All
double
it
check.
has is the T-Mobile.
not the other
It stops
two.
there.
Okay, but the one that was emailed did include that.
Yeah, it include all that.
It's the same one.
I'll start.
So this would be, I don't know if you had a chance to look at the online or that.
No, I didn't. I thought we would have it here, but I have a question. So I do property management, and so I'm very familiar with inspections and all this. And I take pride in my job and what I do. And I know it's hard keeping track of, how many vehicles a household has or how many people are, living in a single unit. To be honest, it's just inspections and be on top of, our lease. Other than that, I mean, just being on top of it. I agree with Ms. Bautista with the overcrowding of cars. There has to be some regulation, but then again, where do you park all these extra vehicles? You have households where there's 3, 4, 5 adults in a household and everyone drives. And so how do we fix that, right? Having control of, how many or having some type of record of how many families live in a single home or a single apartment can probably help the situation in a way, but it's hard. It's really hard. I have a question for Mr. Nguyen. So the business licenses, what would happen to property management companies like Magnolia Housing Authority, CHISPA? Would they have to apply for these licenses as well?
Yes, I think the idea is that it could go either way. We defer to in Salinas. They have accepted projects like yours that are either subsidized or that are deed restricted. So the chances are we probably would accept your organization because you have your on-site inspectors, your own, and your leases. You have very solid control over the issues that are important to the city. So we probably would accepting those properties most likely makes the most sense. An alternative approach might be to obtain the business license. Remember, business licensure is primarily a revenue generating instrument. It's really not, a land use tool as such. But so as a business, you probably should it could be argued, I should say, that you should have a business license, but putting an inspector from the city into your operation that already has controls over it probably would not be warranted.
Right, because I know CHISPA, for example, we go through inspections, we do fire inspections, sprinkler inspections, fire extinguisher inspections, inspections with the fire department. And this helps control really it's hard to say. You can't really control who lives in the unit, but it helps at least manage the property or the housing, right? When you send out notices that you're going to enter a unit, you have more control and have a better idea of overcrowding homes and, all that stuff. So, if these houses, okay, let's say they do get these businesses licensed, they would be inspected by like the fire department, the city, or what kind of inspections are you looking into, having?
That hasn't been entirely vetted because you could go to pretty wide extremes, fire, building, and that's really not what we want to do. We don't want to be tyrannical about this. What we want to do is to protect public health and safety and identify nuisance properties, make sure that the water and sewer hookups and utility delivery, the utility service delivery is what is purported to be. We've had situations where, meters aren't drawing water from the appropriate place and being used. All kinds of weird things are discovered from time to time. So the short answer is probably a balance of some kind. Now, a plain view, often you can plain view look at a property and you can see how well it's maintained. Yeah, are the grounds manicured sufficient to, there's not garbage and junk perhaps all over it. And then there's another extreme where, we have a building official or their designee inside the unit, checking to make sure the electricity is proper, making sure that that's the most dangerous thing to electricity and fire. But plumbing is also an issue, making sure that, there aren't, plumbing fixtures that have been built without any inspections or proper construction. There's no assurance of that. And so, in my mind, I think the answer is somewhere in the middle where the building official assigns and delegates some inspection authority to building inspectors and probably code enforcement. Remember, in the ordinance, we also want to keep costs down. We're not interested in building a rental department in Bay City. I was surprised to learn they have an entire department devoted to this effort, and it works for them. But we're not interested in something that grand, I guess. And so to keep the cost down, there's no reason that code enforcement officials can't perform plain view inspections with some training on the building code, health and safety issues. What are you looking for? Well, we're looking for threats of fire, threats of plumbing, something like that could ensue because a bathroom has been just built out of, from a layperson that may not really know how to build a bathroom, that kind of thing. So we're really on the inspection side thinking that in order for this to pass, because given 2,000, if there's upwards of 2,000 rental units in the city, there's also a lot of landlords, and ADUs are popping up all over the place. They are ministerial, and so we want the inspection services to be minimal, which I can't define right now, unfortunately. But
right, I just want to be clear. Like, we don't want families to feel like we're going in there to see who lives there, right? We want them to understand that this is for health and safety reasons. And so I think I'd be open to having with an inspection with the fire department, inspect water meters, and code enforcement. I think those are the three main ones. And then, Mr. Megan, would you happen to know how many rental properties we have in the city of Greenfield?
No, I don't. The census, the most recent census, says that 52.5% of our households are rental households. And then in 2019, the county, with numerous jurisdictions, Greenfield included, their urban, their non-entitlement jurisdictions, did a study, impediments to housing. It was a comprehensive report, and it's widely referenced in housing throughout the county. They say that our rental stock is at 50%. So we estimate with about 3,800 total single family dwellings, it's probably up to 1,000 units, somewhere around there. So we do have probably quite a bit.
Yeah, that's a big number. And then one last thing, the workshop, will this be available via Zoom? Or is it just in person?
Not via Zoom, but we will be on Facebook Live.
Okay.
And also the Monday, it's Monday the 13th, and the morning one is from 10 to 11.
Okay, that's it for me.
Thank you. Yeah, excuse me, are there any other planning commission?
Yeah.
comments?
I had this friend of mine, his name was Willie Jones. He was a correctional officer. His family lived over on Eucalyptus Drive. This would have been like early 80s or so. And they had a fire, the house they were renting. He lost his wife. His son, Willie Jr., was severely burned. And it was because they had bars on the windows and they couldn't get out. The landlord was trying to prevent people from going in, but he didn't realize people wouldn't be able to get out. And perhaps back then, if they had, they were more diligent in the inspection of homes. I'm not sure that we even had a code enforcement officer back then. I'm almost sure that we didn't. But that might have prevented Willie losing his wife. And years later, then they had another fire over, like we're by the bus barns back in that area. I forget what the name of that street is. That like 6th Street Extension, 7th Street Extension, something like that. And it was because they had a faulty water heater. And several people lost their lives there. And it comes down to, well, nobody was taking care of the place. And unfortunately, from my perspective alone, some people who have rentals, as long as they're getting their payment at the end of the month, that's all they care about. They don't care what the house looks like inside. As I go through town, well, you guys have all seen on my bicycle out there. I see a lot of places that are really, really in bad shape. And I know, like, one of Bob's pet peeves is parking out in the streets. And to some extent, I'm concerned with that too. But from my perspective, one of the ways to help that would be to start towing cars that are abandoned on city streets. There was a vehicle over at the intersection of 10th Street and Oak, and it sat there for months and months and months. The tires were flat, had bird poop all over it, and it got cited. And so what does that individual do? He pumps the tires and parks it across the street. And there we go again. I mean, it finally got towed. And I mean, but back to the issue of the housing. I did my own little survey. Small survey though. 5 people that I questioned. 3 of them were all for it. They were all for having the renters take out permits so they could be held accountable. But then there was 2 people who said no, that Big Brother's already trying to do too much, that they shouldn't be interfering in what people do. Yes, I recognize Mr. Mugen.
Did you say renters take out permits or landlord take out permits?
Sorry. Yeah, but like I said, I'm really redundant here. Some people feel that Big Brother's always doing too much. But from that perspective, I don't think Big Brother's doing enough. And I know when Mrs. Batista brought this to the forefront, it's been some time now, I was all for that, and I still am. I mean, there has to be accountability. I mean, just in the area where I live, there's several houses that are, oh my God, they're just falling apart, and there's lots and lots of people living in there. And see, and that's another thing that comes into play. One of the people that I spoke to, they said that next to them, well, a few houses down from them, there was a home there where there was at least 20 people living there. I think that's what she said. And I said, well, it should be incumbent on you to report it. She says, I have, but nothing changed. It's like, well, the more things change, the more they stay the same, right? But it's unfortunate, but yeah, there has to be accountability. And yeah, maybe some people feel that we're overstepping our bounds, but there's a reason behind it. I think I'd rather people be too strict and err on the side of caution and not have something where you have a catastrophe of some sort, where you lose children, you lose your wives, Yeah. Yeah, because like I said, I think it's unfortunate that a lot of landlords, as long as they're getting their rent at the end of the month, that's all they care about. So now about this permit. I think you said something about maybe renewing the permit like every 3 years or so, something like that in that area. Okay, so what happens in the interim? I mean, okay, so it's like I get a permit and in 2026 my permit's up. Okay, well, so then does the city have inspectors show up? Well, I know that they're going to show up because I'm renewing my permit. So then I'm going to bring everything up to code. But before that, maybe everything, it's like walls falling apart. You got cockroaches running in, blah, blah, blah. The house that's next door to me on my south side, this is several years ago. A young man and his wife and a little son rented the house. And everything was fine for a couple of months, and then a couple more people start showing up, and there's more cars in that area. There's more cars parked on where the lawn used to be. Pretty soon, there's a whole lot of people there. And one day, as I'm leaving to go on my training ride, the garage door is open. And there's sleeping cots in there, and there's sleeping bags in there. And so I went and I spoke to the owner of the house. He lives a couple of blocks from me. So I go and I spoke to him, and I made him aware of the situation. So he went down there. The guy that he rented the house to wasn't even living there. He was subleasing it to all these people. He was making a killing on that. So Miguel went in there and he threw everybody out. Then he had me come in, because some of you might know that I'm a photographer. Anyways, he had me take pictures of his house. His house was just totally destroyed. Above the kitchen stove, there was a big hole that was going down the ceiling. One of the bedrooms, it was the carpeting, I guess they were trying to cook, and most of the carpeting was gone. There was a big hole in the bathtub. They had pulled down the closet door for whatever reason. The back two bedrooms, the windows were knocked out. There's cockroaches everywhere. Everywhere. You couldn't open a door or a drawer somewhere and cockroaches would run out. So, yeah, like I said, Miguel went and threw everybody out. And then the guy that he originally rented to, he had the temerity to come back and ask for his cleaning deposit. I mean, that's sad. But Miguel took him to court. But when a guy doesn't have any money, yeah, you might win your case, but then how are you going to get your money, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think it would behoove our community if we did have where landlords are required to get permits. Yeah, that would be beneficial. I mean, so yeah, that's my 10 cents worth, my 2 cents was free.
Thank you, Commissioner Gallardo. Any other comments from, please?
One comment I have, a few comments I'm going to say, is that code enforcement officers are not doing their job. For one, we got between Jessica's house and my house, we have maybe 4 houses that all got run down cars that are not working or nothing, and they're just sitting there, getting weeds on them, and they should be going by and tagging them and getting them out of there, because they're not runnable cars. They're not. And the other thing is, in the area I live in, and I've complained to the police department on this, is that there's so many cars parked where they park on their corners, blocking the handicap field so where they can go out. If somebody like myself, I'm handicapped. If I'm walking and I have to step on a curb, I could fall, but there, nothing's being done. I went to the police department, complained about it, and nothing is getting done with these parked cars. And the same with me. I have, it's just me and my wife. We have 2 cars, and one's parked in the garage and the other one's outside. And if I had guests come over to my house, I don't have no parking whatsoever for my guests to come because I got 8 people living next door to me that I know of. The one behind it, the next one over, has got about 7 or 8. The one next to them got about 10 people living in there. And on the other side of the house, my house, you got, they rent out rooms for these people to come in because their cars all the time. These people are just going in and out of the house, you know. It's frustrating. And I know it, back when I bought the house back in '89, I had it built there. We had a what do you call it? Where you had to pay a
HOA.
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 Not a HOA, but we had to pay for roads and stuff like that to take care of. The roads are tearing up over here. You go over there and you'll see the roads are all messed up and they need to be redone. And it's because all these cars are parked all over the place. So I don't know. I agree. We need to get the renters, not the renters, but the owners permits them, because, you know, like I have another, I have 2 houses, one around the corner from me. He's renting his house out for $3,500 a month. And I got another one where he owned a Chevron station. He's just opened his house on the corner, and that's what I'm talking about. Where it's, you know, when you got to go make a right-hand turn, you got to go way out into the other lane because cars are parked on the corner. You can't get around them. And he's going to rent his out for $3,500. Plus, he said that they're going to put a garage. They're going to remodel a garage where they're going to rent out for about $1,900 a month. So that's a lot more people coming in the house, and it's just ridiculous. You know, I'm fed up with it, but I'm not going anyplace. I've lived in my house for 34 years now, and I'm not going no place. I'm going to die there, so probably sooner than later. But it's upsetting. It's upsetting when you have people come and visit you. You know, they can't park because I live like on a cul-de-sac. Cars are parked there, parked next to it. They got 6, 7 cars next door to me that live there, and there's only 4 people that can drive. So you know, it's frustrating, and I feel that the code enforcement are not doing their job. That's the main thing.
Thank you for your comments. Commissioner Vasquez, you have
Yes.
any comments?
I have one question for you. When you start to rent control, you got a staff ready to know what can I do? You got the staff ready to control the rents?
You have stuff ready for rent control? Is that what you're saying?
No, I say you got the staff.
Oh, staff,
Staff.
the staff ready.
How many staff you have? How many people?
No, we're not looking at rent control at all.
Well, the thing is, Mrs. Bautista got a good point. Right now, when you're renting, for example, I am renting. And I'm renting for more people to come. Some houses have 25 people in there. You don't need to controlling all the city of Greenfield for the renting. Look at how many cars in the streets right now, especially in the front of my house. Only 2 people drive. I got 6 cars. Sometimes parking in the front of my house because he don't have no place to park his cars. But only two person driving. Sometimes the person to rent in a house right now in Greenfield, that's you don't see in the days, only in the nights. You don't drive in the nights in Greenfield. How many cars parking? You never come when the what do you call when they clean up the streets, the car, so many cars. You don't clean up the streets. All the streets not clean them up. Look at the Camino Real, how it is in the morning. A lot of people throw the garbage, everything. The city is a lot of mess, especially because the police do not impose the city codes. Do not move, do not try, some cars do not move for, like I said, Mr. Gallardo, for a month. Stay right here. Do not move. You need to do something. After to rent control, the people, you're not gonna control the renters, the landlords, you're not gonna control it. Because I tell you, okay, you're renting, but tomorrow you in the house is about 20 or 25 people in the house right here in Greenfield. This is what I think. Mrs. Bautista got a good point. You give it everything, I think. Everything, what is a Greenfield? What is the really Greenfield it is right now? Look at the Greenfield. You never try around the Greenfield? The cars and everything? Look at what it is. In the night, especially in the night. A lot of cars in there. You don't have no place to park your car. After to start to rent control for landlords, any landlords tell you how many people renting. Any people coming to tell you how many people's in the house, because everybody working in the days, coming the nights to sleep and going. This is my point.
If I could interject something here.
Okay, let's go with.
Well, I think it's pretty obvious to me anyways that the reason some of these homes are overcrowded is because the rent is so high. If you're working out in the field and you're making minimum wage and you got your own family, it's like how you gonna afford, $3,500. Yeah, so I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm not condoning that they have that many people in there. But yeah, housing is a problem here. We all know that. I mean, it's pretty obvious. But yeah, but something has to be done about it. I don't even take it spot here.
Just one thing I have to say is that Mr. Vasquez brought up about parking and stuff. Over here on El Camino between the Chase Bank and Reed Avenue, they've got posted no parking signs all right there. Go by there, you'll see nothing but cars parked there. No parking sign.
And that's regularly. Regularly?
Yes.
Where is that exactly? ECR?
Right, you go out here, go right, and right by the Chase Bank. The Chase Bank to Reed Avenue, there's no parking signs. Well, actually, there's no parking signs all along here. But they're parked because people living in apartments, they all kind of park there. And they're not ticketing them. Why aren't they ticketing? Can I have another question?
Please, yeah.
My question is, you need to have the police control right now. Like I said, the issues.
I'm sorry, we have to get what?
You need the police here, we're supposed to have controlling.
The
Let's
police,
just make a ticket seated.
police department.
And just to clarify, this is like not, the purpose is not to control rents or how many families live in a household. This is just health and safety. So,
Exactly.
well,
But
but it's, you have to do that.
Well, can I go now?
Yeah.
So I have a question for the city attorney. Thank you for being here, Ms. Thompson. This is a rare occurrence, so. So earlier in Mr. Mugen's presentation, he mentioned that, I'm not sure if it's the building code or a state, law that, in a 1,500 square foot place, 200 square foot per person is the rule. So, since we do have resident or houses that have 20 to 30 to 40 residents, and I know that there's also, like you mentioned, we can't control the number of people, but there has to be a measure of control. And I'm wondering if it's the family component.
It is. So
that
you can,
overrides that.
yeah. So the 200 square feet for one person is a building code. And so, and that can be regulated, and you can regulate the number of people that live in a home, but you can't if they're related. So that's the exception, is if any number of related people can live in the same house and the city can't tell them they can't. So if they're just roommates, then that number can be regulated. But then it gets into this whole thing. How do you confirm,
Show your birth certificate.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's where it gets tricky. So that's why, like Vice Chair Zavala was saying, it's really a better idea to focus on the actual health and safety issues, whether it's illegal construction or whatever, anything that violates the building code, basically.
Well, is there a mechanism to, okay, I get the related people, but can you limit the number? Because it's ridiculous to have 36 relatives in a 1,500 square foot house.
I mean, there is case law at the Supreme Court level that says that governments can't regulate family members living together. So, I mean, I would agree, it is ridiculous to have that many people in such a small space. But I don't think so.
Where do the health and safety mitigation measures come in?
I mean, that's where you have to focus on the structure or the parcel or the actual land components as opposed to the people, if that makes sense. So like, is the water and sewer working? Is the electricity safe? Did they build additions that weren't permitted? Because we see that a lot when there's extra people in the house, like a illegal garage conversion, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So
What if their relatives living in the garage?
yeah, and then you can say you can say you can't live in the garage because it's not been permitted as a bedroom. So that's where it gets tricky. And then I think with the parking issue, since I'm up here, I mean, it's not quite related or it's separate from, because that too, a landlord or the city can't say how many cars someone can own, but they can certainly tell them where they can and can't park. So that's, I think, not even something that would necessarily be included in a rental program, because if they're parked on the street, even the landlord doesn't have control over that. That really does have to be city code enforcement.
Well, a lot of this to me, it is health and safety. And I mean, when you have overcrowded parking, some of our streets are wide enough to handle that load, but then some are not. And they block the view. I mean, people can walk out in the middle of the street and, if there's cars everywhere, the driver's not going to see that person.
Yeah.
So I really think that this is an opportunity to do as much as we can and do it under the veil of health and safety. And also I want to know how defined is our nuisance property ordinance, and can we amend that? Because maybe, from our ordinances, a lot of them are from the 1940s, and what was a nuisance back then probably changed.
So the city just updated its nuisance property ordinance,
Mhm.
but it really, the updates really relate to how it's enforced.
Mhm.
Any violation of the municipal code, which includes the building code, is a public nuisance. So it is broad. It just really is a matter of actually getting out and enforcing it. Which,
Okay, I'm sorry, you have to bear with me.
Yeah,
I scribbled notes everywhere. So, yeah, I wanted to look more into the definition of a nuisance property and see if we could possibly update that. I agree with my colleagues who are on board with a permit for landlords. I don't know that it should be so expensive, because I know that when Monterey was doing this, there was pushback from, there was a lot of pushback. I'm not familiar with any pushback with the Salinas ordinance. And in reviewing it, I think it looks really good. I think we can pull a lot from that. But so again, I'm for the license component and for the period of time, because I think what it does, it's going to open up these rental properties. So we can know who they are, have a point of contact, and then have an entryway for inspections. And as much as we can regulate the number of cars and the number of people that aren't related, should be included too. Because as you mentioned, fire inspections are crucial, and you can do the eyeball, look at a residence and not see anything, but you don't know what's in the back of the house. You don't know what's inside the house.
Well, from my perspective, just look at the front of the house, it tells you what the rest of the house looks
Yeah.
like.
But see, I've been doing this for a while and I learn every year. There's times that I'm like, oh shoot, I did not notice that, or I did not know that can cause this. And it's just, and I think it's about teaching, property owners or it's going to take time. And this is, it's going to take time for them to learn and get used to it. And I think this will help maybe control, the overcrowding. It's funny that you say that, like, you give them a 3-year, permit, and then here comes year 3, and then they prepare but that's good. That's a good thing.
Yeah, but how about
Well, I understand that, but how do you can't control them every single year.
Understand that part, but that's where the regulations need to come in. I mean, it's like you make stipulations. Okay, you get a permit. We can go in there and check it like once a year or whatever. Make stipulations. I mean, just don't say, okay, in 3 years they're going to inspect you because your permit's going to be up. No, you need to have some sort of stipulations, because it's like.
Well, can we do like a 3-year permit, but an annual inspection?
It's a good idea. But I mean,
Businesses are required every year to pay permits, every year to conduct business in the city of Greenville. We don't get the 3-year one-time fee. And we're open to inspection at any time.
one thing I'll say about the cost, because Chair Garcia brought it up, is that the city can only charge as much as it costs to administer the program. So the cost for administrative things or the actual time to go out and inspect. So they can't charge any exorbitant fee. They can really only just charge what it costs to do the work.
Can code enforcement costs be included in that?
Yeah.
Or
Yes.
a portion of it go towards that?
Yeah. So the updates to the nuisance ordinance include staff time. So time to go out and issue citations, or to do inspections or any of those things, or even direct costs. If they have to board up a window or something like that, they would charge the property owner for that.
Yeah, and I am on board with the business license for another reason, because when I moved here, the housing stock, it wasn't impressive, 80%, I want to say, homeowners versus renters. But with the housing crash in 2008, we're now at 50%. And a lot of that housing stock went to investors. And that's who I think we need to hold accountable completely. And as far as the parking, I know it's difficult, But again, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. I mean, the city of Monterey issues out parking passes to residents or apartments fronting the street, and you have to limit it. If you don't limit it, then you have what we have here. So that's something to look at too. And I know that's not going to be popular because as Ms. Zavala mentioned, there are 5 working adults in a house who all need to drive to work, you know, and maybe that will help us get some mass transportation to help us get to where we need to go and not have so many gas guzzling cars.
How do you what I'm looking for? How do you enforce a parking over review of that? I mean, do you tell the people in the apartments, this is your parking spot, blah, 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 and you can't go beyond that?
Sign.
Yeah, so there's two parking permits per household. One assigned parking, the other one's first come, first serve. If you have more than 2 vehicles, then you would have to park in the street. But even the street is not overcrowded on, you know, it's not. And just enforcing, you know, we have a security company that comes at random times at night. And if you don't have the parking permit, you get a warning. And then I think it's a 72-hour warning. And then second violation, it's a towing. And that's how you control it.
So, so at the beginning of this, Mr. Mugen, you said that we need to come up with the why, with the purpose, and then, you know, conform this to the ordinance. So for me, the why is bottom line, health and safety. And the purpose is accountability. And we need to know who the investor owners are that are, maybe they're unaware of the subletting, you know, you never know.
Yeah.
But regardless, if there are 36 people, and I know this has happened, I think you reported it to us earlier in the year that there was a situation where 36 people were living in, and they weren't related, and it was health and safety, and you had to relocate them to a hotel, and it was, maybe it was the fire chief who reported on them. But I do recall that, so it does occur, and we had experience. We just need to do what we can to make it enforceable. And lastly, I know this is about rental registry, but Mr. Urquidez's point about the parked cars, I mean, maybe these are in front of rentals, who knows? But the broken down cars and the cars with weeds growing in them, I agree that is blight. And I hope that's in our nuisance ordinance, because blight is a nuisance. But
you just need to get the code enforcement to do their job, and they're not doing their job, sorry to say.
Yeah.
Because you never see them.
Well, we gotta fix that.
Yep.
So, yeah, and I believe, I mean, I'm not sure what they're, but towing abandoned cars is gonna get people's attention.
Especially when you got cars that are parked in the driveway with, they haven't registered in 2 or 3 years. Now that's a violation right there, because they're not registered. They should be towed.
Yeah, and I'm looking, I'm just glancing at the Salinas ordinance, and they're exempting, like you mentioned, Mr. Mugen, the subsidized residential rental units, but would be like yours, but they're also exempting ADUs. Is that a good idea or not? Because you could cram a bunch of people in an ADU with.
No, my
cars there too.
no, my
Definitely no parking for those.
Yeah, just my own opinion is no, it's not a good idea. We're seeing all kinds of interesting things going on in the ADU world, and not a lot of it it captures the type of sentiment that Commissioner Urquidez is talking about regarding parking. And we're really tasked to stay ahead of the laws that have come down from the state to try and stay ahead of protecting neighborhoods, the community. But I don't think it's a good idea generally.
I think that we need to set a standard for our ADUs. I know there's a lot already built or in process, but there's one on my street and it's really spectacular. It's so well built. It's on Thorpe. I didn't even notice it until I did, and I was like, wow, that it was really, really well done. And I don't see any parking issues. I don't know if it's even occupied yet, but it's a beautiful backyard ADU that's visible from the street.
It's really what we're trying to do is we're trying to match whatever we can find as a best practice in codified into an ordinance that will serve the community well.
Yeah, and I would also like to see in the ordinance or somehow because I remember going to those housing element meetings and the people who are renting, they really, really are. There are cases of them being taken advantage of with application fees that are $100 that they have to pay when there isn't a place to rent. So, you know, if we can somehow address that type of, shall I say, landlord abuse.
Yeah, that's where it gets a little tricky is we don't really want to encroach into landlord tenant law. And those two people have a contractual relationship and it's not the city's relationship to enforce. And then there are other avenues that tenants can take to improve their situation. And the way the city might approach it is more through education where they could because I think I saw that in the Salinas ordinance where they used some of the money that they collected for the fees to provide education to tenants as to how they can
know their rights.
Yeah, know their rights, basically. Yeah.
I think that should be a component as well. And I'm really glad you're having these. Is this the only workshop you're going to have or discussion on this with the public? Or
we're not sure.
See how it goes.
Well, we are very interested in seeing the turnout. The crazy thing with the housing element, we held numerous relatively successful outreach activities, and a lot of people participated. And during the public review of the housing element, nobody added anything further. So the outreach really pays. And if it depends. It depends. We probably will. One might not be enough to capture everybody. I think that when I think there's going to be pushback when landlords see the ordinance because there's a real consensus formulating that there needs to be control over these rental units, whether that's in the form of an inventory or accountability, whatever you call it. The fact that we can't answer, hey, how many 3-bedroom, 2-baths you got in the city? We don't know. We can answer that if the question is commercial. How many commercial properties do you have zoned to office? We can look that up and give you a number. Or industrial or highway commercial. We can tell you that. And with the state's emphasis on the housing emergency, I think it's well within the city's prerogative to accurately inventory what's here and create policy based on at least a set of facts that you know are facts.
Are you interested in owner occupied single family residence in your inventory for giggles, or just to know that how many owner occupied versus available rentals or rental?
No, that's an issue we're going to need to address in some manner. Whether owner occupied has an impact, and it does impact several issues.
They're the angry guys. Okay, are there any other comments? So do you need direction from us, or is this gonna come back?
I got to touch it.
And
that lets you know,
give you enough input to,
you're invited to contact me, call me if you have something you want to just tell me personally. And I'll probably reach out to you as well when we get closer to presenting an ordinance. So don't be surprised.
I think you're definitely on the right track, and I apologize that this has taken so long, but in the meantime, other cities have done a lot of the framework for this, where we can pick and choose what will fit here, because we are not Salinas and we're not Monterey. But we do have shared issues. So I hope it gets to become a priority.
Thanks.
Okay, there's nothing further on this. We can move on to 3, a report from city staff on prior planning commission requests and inquiries. There's staff report.
I will be sending or phoning all of you tomorrow regarding an invitation to participate in a planning commissioner academy. I believe it's in Long Beach, but we'd be pleased to send any or all of you if you'd like to attend. I've been to several of these over the years when I was a commissioner, and they're very beneficial. I don't have the information that were with me right now, but I will get that to you immediately tomorrow, and will urge you that if you're interested, we, I'm sure, have budget to help defray costs for such a good educational opportunity. And but would caution you to, if you're interested, due diligence to check it out, because the hotels and accommodations do fill up quickly.
When is it?
I can't remember.
Okay. March.
6. That's all I have at the moment. We've been working on the workshop, and there's obviously a lot of development of what we're going to see now. I mean, we didn't have any business last month, and some of the planning I don't know if it's slowing down or not, but you're going to see a lot more building now. You're seeing a lot of construction and keeping up with what's going on at the EAH site, and also at the Walnut Visitor Center is keeping us occupied. And of course, the ADUs are continuously challenging because of various reasons. But
Okay, do we have any public comments on that report from staff?
No comments.
Thank you.
Before Madam Chair, before we adjourn, again, the workshop is going to be Monday, November 13th. It's going to be at the library. It's going to be in the morning. It's going to be from 10 to 11. In the afternoon, it's going to be from 6 to 7. And also an update. I don't know if trying to share my screen, but it's not letting me for some reason. Oh, there we go. So Public Works should post an update on their Facebook page. I don't know if you guys saw it. Just bringing it up to your attention, because I know Vice Chair Zavala had mentioned the dog waste. So they did install some dog waste at the Patriot Park, Roses Park, Tuscany Park, or Apricot Park. So they each those parks got installed one of the dog waste bags. So just wanted to bring that to your attention.
I did notice that, and thank you for sharing that. Do you know how many were installed in each park?
One.
Just one in each park.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, it's a start. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
They look great.
Yeah, I did get a lot of community members that reached out, and they're very happy to see that. So thank you.
Anything else?
That's for my part.
I don't know if this is the proper place to ask this, but do we know the status of the Poppy gas station? Because when I drive by there, I see that the lot's still for sale and I'm pretty sure that's where it's going. Is that project still viable?
Yeah, it's interesting you ask. There's one property that's for sale, and that's a 3-acre piece that extends behind the self-storage unit that goes way in the back. And that's a separate, it's for sale, and it is not the Poppy truck storage. The last time I spoke to the ownership, they were gung-ho by the end of the year, which we're in November. So they said by the end of the year, they were going to have their building permits submitted to the city. Now I've been calling them for the last 2 weeks, and I haven't been able to make contact with them. So, but that's the real estate sign that's posted there, they're seeking lessees to lease the space that they plan to build. So hopefully that's exactly what's happening there.
Okay. Thank you for that. Okay, if there's nothing else, we can move on to H, comments from Planning Commission and staff. Staff, do you have any closing comments?
None.
Okay, Commission? Well, I wanted to thank staff for arranging for the tour of the New Wave cannabis facility. I really enjoyed that tour. I attended with Commissioner Zavala. I found it very informative. It's an impressive facility. I loved how the plants were cared for. They had, this is where our babies are, and these are where the teenagers are, and then the adults. They really care for their product. And I just found it it was a very professional kind of laboratory facility. I didn't know what to expect, but I was really impressed with that. So thank you for arranging that tour. And that's all I have. Anybody else? Okay, meeting adjourned 7:37.
No, they're being in some of it. I know. Hey.